For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God.
Jon Jones is the youngest champion in UFC history!
Officers, I hate you. I hate you.
It's the year 1866. A desperate novelist named Fyodor Dostoevsky sits in a cramped apartment in St. Petersburg, racing against a deadline that will cost him everything if he misses it. He is writing Crime and Punishment, a novel about a young man who believes he is extraordinary, so extraordinary that the moral laws governing ordinary people simply do not apply to him. He commits a terrible crime, and then he spends the rest of the story discovering that no amount of genius can outrun guilt. He had no idea that over 150 years later, he would describe the career of Jon Jones with frightening accuracy.
Full mount. He's taking some big elbows, Mike. Quinn's trying to pry it off. It's all over!
We view Jon Jones as the greatest mixed martial artist who ever lived, the prodigy who defeated legends before he could legally drink, the fighter whose talent was so vast that the only person who could ever stop him was himself. And that's true. All of it.
Well, I believe that I'm already the greatest fighter of all time. You know, my record speaks for itself. I've beaten 6 Hall of Famers already, and my resume is uncomparable to anybody in our sport.
But through a Dostoevskian lens, Jon Jones isn't just a fighter. He is the most complete modern embodiment of Raskolnikov's fatal question. Can an extraordinary man exempt himself from the rules that govern everyone else? Dostoevsky wrote, "The extraordinary man has the right, not an official right, but an inner right, to decide in his own conscience to overstep certain obstacles." Jon Jones didn't just overstep obstacles, he obliterated every one of them, inside the octagon and outside of it. And then he proved exactly what Dostoevsky spent 500 pages warning us about. This is how the most talented fighter in combat sports history lived out the exact moral catastrophe Dostoevsky predicted over a century ago. But to understand why Jones became Dostoevsky's nightmare, you first have to understand why everyone, including Jones himself, believed the rules genuinely didn't apply to him. And honestly, the evidence was terrifying. In Crime and Punishment, Dostoevsky's protagonist Raskolnikov develops a theory that divides all of humanity into 2 categories. The ordinary, who must live in submission, who must follow the law, who exist only to reproduce their kind. And the extraordinary, men like Napoleon, like Caesar, who have an inner right to transgress any law, any boundary, any moral code, because their greatness demands it. In his theory, Raskolnikov divides humanity. All men are divided into ordinary and extraordinary. Ordinary men have to live in submission and have no right to transgress the law because they are ordinary. On the contrary, the extraordinary have the right to commit any crime and to transgress the law in any way because they are extraordinary. Now look at Jon Jones, the son of a pastor, one of 3 brothers who all became professional athletes, a man who walked into an octagon for the first time and looked like he had been fighting his entire life. Not just talented, gifted in a way that seemed almost unfair, reach that didn't make sense, wrestling that appeared out of nowhere, a creativity inside the cage that no one had ever seen before.
Roman skills like, spinning back!
And then, at an age when most fighters are still learning how to throw combinations, Jon then defended that belt against a murderer's row of legends: Rampage Jackson, Lyoto Machida, Rashad Evans, Vitor Belfort, Chael Sonnen, Alexander Gustafsson, Daniel Cormier. One by one, the best light heavyweights on the planet tried to solve the puzzle of Jon Jones. None of them could.
Quinn's trying to pry it off. It's all over! It is all over! It is all over! Wow. Trying to finish this fight! Now he's going for Kimura. It is all over! That's it. Jon Jones remains! Ribcage of Cormier. There it is! But Jon Jones springs right back up to his feet.
Dostoevsky would have recognized Jones immediately. Here was a man whose talent was so undeniable that the normal rules of competition didn't apply to him. He didn't just win, he made greatness look inevitable. But Dostoevsky also knew what happens next, because Raskolnikov's theory wasn't wrong about talent. It was wrong about what talent entitles you to do. Because what Jon Jones did next wasn't just a mistake. It was the moment that split his entire life into before and after. And it didn't happen inside an octagon. It happened on a road in Albuquerque at 5 in the morning. In Crime and Punishment, Raskolnikov commits murder to prove his theory. He kills an old pawnbroker because he believes his extraordinary mind gives him the right. And in the moment after the crime, he expects to feel nothing, because extraordinary men are supposed to be above guilt. Instead, he is consumed by it. Dostoevsky wrote, "I've only killed a louse, Sonia, a useless, loathsome, harmful creature." On April 26, 2015, Jon Jones ran a red light in his rental SUV in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He crashed into a car driven by a pregnant woman. He broke her arm. And then he did something that defines the rest of this story. He ran.
Three-car accident.
Anyone injured?
I'm not sure. I know 2 people did get out. I think they're all out of their cars, so I think they're okay. There's a silver SUV, Buick. There's a maroon. I'm guessing it was a Honda. I can't tell. And then there's a Toyota Camry.
He fled on foot. Then he came back, not to check on the woman, not to call for help, but to grab a handful of cash from his car. Then he ran again.
Tonight we're getting a look at what police found inside his car after a crash.
Police say that wreck was a hit and run and the UFC superstar is facing charges. Now Action 7 reporter Laura Train shows us more video of the officers searching his car.
Albuquerque police quickly realized one of the cars involved in this hit-and-run crash may belong to a celebrity.
To the registered lease to this car is Jon Jones, the MMA fighter.
In this shaky lapel camera video, officers go through the silver Buick, finding dirty clothes, water bottles, some loose change.
Yeah, there's cash in here.
And then some interesting personal items, including a pipe and
those condoms.
Jon Jones is accused of running a red light, slamming into this maroon car and running away. Police say the woman in that car was pregnant and ended up breaking her arm. The former UFC champ now faces a felony charge of leaving the scene of an accident involving death or personal injuries.
Police found a marijuana pipe in the vehicle, rental documents in Jones's name, witnesses who saw him leave and return. The pregnant woman was hospitalized. Dostoevsky's Raskolnikov killed a pawnbroker and expected to feel like Napoleon. Instead, the guilt ate him alive. Jones fled a pregnant woman and expected the world to move on. Instead, the UFC stripped him of his title and suspended him indefinitely.
You know, this guy's got a lot of demons, man. A lot of demons.
But here is where Jones diverges from Raskolnikov in the most disturbing way. Raskolnikov was destroyed by his crime. Jones kept winning. And that's where the story gets truly disturbing. Because Jon Jones wasn't just a fighter who made a terrible mistake. He was 2 entirely different people living inside the same body. And Dostoevsky had a name for exactly that. Dostoevsky was obsessed with the idea of the double, the person who presents one face to the world while hiding another. His novels are filled with characters who are split in 2. The saint who sins, the sinner who prays, the genius who self-destructs. Dostoevsky wrote, "Man is broad, too broad. I would narrow him." Jon Jones is perhaps the broadest man in combat sports history. On one side, the devout Christian who points to the sky after every victory, who thanks God in every post-fight interview, who speaks about being a role model for young athletes.
The undisputed UFC light heavyweight champion of the world.
Dog fight I've been looking for. Tonight was a blessing in so many ways. Got the victory, and I got to prove a lot to myself.
On the other side, the man who tested positive for cocaine in December 2014 and spent exactly 1 day in rehab before checking himself out. the man who crashed his Bentley into a telephone pole while drunk in 2012, the man arrested for aggravated DWI in 2020 with a loaded gun in his car and an open bottle of mezcal, the man arrested for domestic violence in September 2021, hours after being inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame, after his fiancée was found bleeding from her nose and mouth at Caesar's Palace.
Jon Jones was arrested and charged with a DWI early Saturday morning. Police told Action News that Jon Jones was on the scene and it was his 2012 Bentley that had crashed into a telephone pole at the corner.
UFC light heavyweight champ Jon Jones has tested positive for traces of cocaine.
MMA fighter Jon Jones has been arrested again for DWI and negligent use of a firearm. Officers responded to a call. When they arrived, they found Jones drunk in his car. Police later found a handgun and an open bottle of alcohol. The domestic violence arrest of MMA fighter Jon Jones. Jones was arrested in Las Vegas Friday morning. Lobby staff at Caesar's Palace reports that she was bleeding from the nose and lip and stated she was scared to return to the room if Jones was there. Jones is charged with domestic battery and tampering with a vehicle for allegedly headbutting a police car, leaving a dent after being arrested.
Officers, I hate you. I hate you.
Hours. The gap between the Hall of Fame and the handcuffs was hours.
I got the Hall of Fame tonight, and then you're gonna put me on this by walking down the street.
Dostoevsky understood this duality better than any philosopher ever could, because he didn't just write about it, he lived it. Dostoevsky was a gambling addict who preached moral discipline, a man tormented by his own contradictions, and he poured that torment into every character he created. Jon Jones is a Dostoevsky character who escaped from the pages and stepped into an octagon. But here's what no one talks about. Dostoevsky's characters eventually pay. The punishment always comes. For Jon Jones, the punishment came again and again and again, and it never stuck. And that created something far worse than a fallen champion. In Crime and Punishment, Raskolnikov's real punishment isn't prison. It's the psychological torment of living with what he's done. The guilt follows him everywhere. He can't sleep, he can't eat. He confesses to strangers without meaning to. The crime lives inside him like a parasite. Dostoevsky wrote, "Suffering and pain are always obligatory on those of wide intellect and profound feeling." Jon Jones has been punished more than any champion in UFC history. Stripped of his title, suspended multiple times, arrested repeatedly, failed drug tests that erased victories and canceled fights, banned from his own training gym. His legacy carries a permanent asterisk. And yet, and this is what makes the story almost unbearable, he keeps coming back, and he keeps winning. After every arrest, after every suspension, after every scandal that would have ended any other career, Jon Jones returns to the octagon and proves that he is still the most talented fighter alive.
Big shot by Jon Jones. In trouble here. Gustafson's in trouble. That's it. Jones has regained the throne. He might not be stung. He might be wobbling because of the knee. Big knee for Jones. And still.
This is the cruelest version of Dostoevsky's thesis. Raskolnikov was at least forced to confront his crime. Jones never has to, because the talent keeps providing an escape. Every comeback victory is a pardon. Every dominant performance rewrites the narrative. The system keeps forgiving him. The UFC keeps welcoming him back. The fans keep buying the pay-per-views. And the extraordinary man learns the worst possible lesson, that he really can overstep the rules and get away with it. Dostoevsky wrote, "I wanted to become a Napoleon. That is why I killed. Raskolnikov failed because he wasn't truly extraordinary. His guilt proved he was ordinary after all. Jones succeeds, and that's far more terrifying. Because what happens to a man who transgresses again and again and never faces a consequence that sticks? There was one last chance. Dostoevsky gave Raskolnikov one final door: confession. Real confession, the kind that costs you everything. Jon Jones walked up to that door more times than any athlete in history. What he did when he got there is the most heartbreaking part of this story. At the end of Crime and Punishment, Raskolnikov confesses. Not because the police catch him, not because the evidence overwhelms him. He confesses because the weight of carrying the crime has become heavier than the punishment could ever be. He surrenders to suffering because suffering is the only path back to being human.
Dostoevsky wrote, "But that is the beginning of a new story, the story of the gradual renewal of a man." Jon Jones has confessed dozens of times. After the cocaine test, I made a really dumb decision. After the hit and run, got a lot of soul searching to do. Sorry to everyone I've let down. After the DWI, he posted a video lifting weights with the caption, "I will leave alcohol in my past forever." After the domestic violence arrest, silence, followed by a move to a new training camp.
I haven't had the opportunity to talk to him. And you know, I just wanted to tell him that I'm sorry. That's really it. I know this fight meant a lot to him.
But Dostoevsky understood something about confession that Jones hasn't learned. A confession that doesn't lead to transformation isn't a confession, it's a performance. Raskolnikov's confession cost him everything. It sent him to Siberia. It stripped him of his freedom. And through that suffering, something new was born. Jones's confessions cost him nothing. They are followed by comebacks, not consequences, by title shots, not exile. And so the cycle continues. Crime, confession, return, repeat. Endlessly, with no real transformation underneath.
So here is the moment with about as much fanfare as you would expect. The #1 ranked light heavyweight contender, the consensus greatest light heavyweight.
Dostoevsky believed that redemption requires genuine suffering, that Jon Jones has never lost anything that couldn't be given back. And that might be the saddest part of this story. Not that he fell, but that he was never allowed to hit the ground. Is Jon Jones a bad person? That's not the right question. Dostoevsky was never interested in simple moral judgments. He was interested in what happens to a human being who is told, by his talent, by his success, by the world around him, that the rules don't apply to him. And what happens is this. The extraordinary man doesn't become a villain. He becomes something more tragic. He becomes a man who never has to grow, who never has to change, who is so gifted that the world keeps forgiving him before he's finished apologizing.
And he's putting pressure. Jon Jones, the greatest of all time. I mean, Jon took no punishment except a kick to the nuts, got him down immediately, and is absolutely dominant.
Jon Jones is the greatest fighter who ever lived. Almost no one disputes that. But Dostoevsky would want you to know that greatness without accountability isn't greatness. It's a prison that looks like a palace.
That, ladies and gentlemen, is the future.
The undisputed UFC light heavyweight champion of the world.
The officers responded to a call. When they arrived, they found Jones drunk in his car. Police later found a handgun and an open bottle of alcohol.
Officers, I hate you. I hate you.
I haven't had the opportunity to talk to him. You know, I just wanted to tell them I'm sorry. That's really it. I know this fight meant a lot to him.
And he's putting pressure.
Champion of the world,
Over 150 years ago, a desperate novelist in St. Petersburg wrote about a young man who believed his brilliance put him above the law. The novel ends with that man in chains, finally free because the punishment forced him to become human again. Jon Jones never got those chains, and so he remains the most extraordinary man in combat sports. And the most incomplete. Dostoevsky warned us. He told us exactly what happens when talent becomes an exemption, when every crime is followed by a comeback instead of a consequence, and when the world keeps telling an extraordinary man that he doesn't have to be good, he just has to be great. And here's what none of us want to admit. We let it happen. We watched every arrest, we read every apology, we bought every pay-per-view. And we never once demanded that the greatest fighter in history become the greatest man. We chose the extraordinary, and we forgave everything else.